Last night, you dreamed about something strange. Maybe you were falling, maybe you were being chased. Maybe someone you love said something they'd never actually say, and it felt completely real until the moment you woke up. You probably didn't think much of it. Dreams feel private, personal, almost random. But here's the strange part. If you had lived 50,000 years ago, sleeping on the floor of a cave with a fire burning low nearby, there's a good chance you would have dreamed about something remarkably similar. Not the same details, not the same faces, but the same shapes. The same themes, the same handful of plots repeating themselves night after night across nearly every human who has ever closed their eyes. And that repetition might be the most revealing thing about dreaming that science has found. Start with the most common dream reported across cultures, time periods, and continents: being chased. Researchers who study dream content, including psychologist Calvin Hall, who spent decades collecting and cataloging tens of thousands of dream reports, found that being pursued by something threatening is one of the most universal dream experiences on record, not just common in one culture. Common everywhere researchers have looked. Why would a chase scene be the default setting of the sleeping human mind? One influential idea, known as the threat simulation theory, comes from Finnish psychologist Antti Revonsuo. His argument is direct. Dreaming may function as a kind of rehearsal space, a low-cost simulator where the brain practices detecting and escaping danger without any of the real-world risk. For nearly all of human history, that danger was constant: predators, rival groups, falls from cliffs or trees. A brain that quietly rehearsed these threats at night, even in imagined form, may have responded faster and more effectively when a real threat appeared during waking hours. If that theory holds, the chase dream you had last night isn't random noise. It's an ancient training exercise, still running on a nervous system that no longer needs it nearly as often. Falling is the second most reported dream theme worldwide, and it fits the same pattern almost perfectly. Before platforms, ladders, and multi-story buildings were part of daily life, one of the most consistent physical dangers early humans faced was exactly this: losing footing on uneven ground, near a cliff edge, or while climbing a tree to escape a predator or reach food. A dream that rehearses the sudden shock of falling, the jolt of catching yourself, may be practicing a response that once had to be instant to be useful at all. Here's a question worth sitting with. If dreams are rehearsals for danger, why don't modern humans mostly dream about the actual dangers we face today? Car accidents, deadlines, difficult emails. The honest answer is that evolution moves far slower than culture does. The dreaming brain appears to still be drawing from an older script, one shaped over hundreds of thousands of years of a very different kind of danger. Cars have existed for roughly a century. Predators shaped the human nervous system for nearly the entire span of human existence before that. The dreaming mind, much like the fear response that governs your waking life, hasn't caught up to the world you actually live in. But danger isn't the only recurring theme. Social conflict, embarrassment, and belonging show up constantly in dream research as well. And this points to something equally old. For most of human history, humans lived in small, tightly interdependent groups, sometimes as few as 20 or 30 people. Being excluded from that group wasn't an inconvenience. Anthropological research into small-scale societies suggests that ostracism could mean losing access to shared food, protection, and survival itself. A dream rehearsing social rejection, being laughed at, being left behind, maybe practicing an emotional response to a threat that was every bit as real as a predator, just slower and quieter. This helps explain why so many people report dreams about being unprepared, showing up to a test you never studied for, standing in front of a crowd, suddenly realizing you don't know what to say. These aren't about literal tests or literal crowds. Researchers studying dream content argue they may reflect a much older anxiety. The fear of being caught unprepared in front of your group, exposed as someone who cannot contribute, cannot keep up, cannot be trusted. There's a deeper layer to all of this, and it involves how dreaming actually works in the brain. During a stage of sleep called REM, rapid eye movement sleep, brain activity in areas linked to emotion and memory becomes highly active. while the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logic and impulse control, becomes comparatively quiet. Neuroscientist Matthew Walker, whose research has extensively examined sleep and emotional processing, has described REM sleep as a state that allows the brain to process emotional memories without the full intensity of the emotion attached to them while awake. In other words, dreaming may help strip the sharp edge off frightening or stressful experiences, making them easier to carry the next day. If that's true, ancient humans dreaming about being chased by a predator weren't just rehearsing escape. They may have been processing the very real fear that predator caused, so that fear didn't paralyze them the next time they left the safety of the group. So, what did ancient humans actually dream about, as specifically as evidence allows? Anthropologists who have studied dream reports among modern hunter gatherer societies, including groups like the Ache and the San, have found recurring dream content involving animals, hunting, ancestors, and social tension within the group. Dreams about deceased relatives appear with particular frequency and are often treated with significant cultural importance, sometimes interpreted as messages or visits rather than random mental noise. This suggests dreaming wasn't just a private biological process, it was woven into how early human communities understood memory, loss, and connection to those who came before them. That's the modern mirror worth pausing on. Your dreams about falling, about being chased, about showing up somewhere unprepared are not glitches in an overactive imagination. They are an extremely old rehearsal system, still faithfully running its ancestral programming, even though the specific dangers it once trained you for have mostly disappeared. You may never be chased by a predator through tall grass. You may never fall from a tree while escaping one. But somewhere in the sleeping architecture of your brain, a very old simulation still runs those exact scenarios night after night. Because for the vast majority of human history, staying alive depended on being ready for exactly that. You wake up, the dream fades, and without ever noticing it, you carry forward a rehearsal that began long before you were born and will likely continue long after you've forgotten what you dreamed last night at all.